Recently, there has been a lot of speculation and talk about the future of consoles as we currently understand them. Of course, this has been in the form of discussion of PlayStation 4.5 and of course Xbox 1.5 or Xbox Next, depending on your preference. And Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot has spoken on his opinions about traditional consoles and their lifespan and what he actually expects for the future of consoles. Now, his opinions aren't really regarding this generation or even the next generation, but the generation after that. And he has said that he expects traditional consoles to be replaced by what he calls new types of consoles, which he's basically saying is going to be likely streaming based after the next gen. Now, he said during an earnings call, quote, "Now on the console side, we expect there will be new consoles that are going to make this market continue to grow, and we feel we'll still have another generation of consoles before we have new types of consoles coming to the market. We believe in streaming. It demands lots of bandwidths. We think it's going to grow, but today, with the types of games we have, it will still take a bit more time to be more popular." Now, naturally, given that the topic of his opinions, he was asked, well, what about the PlayStation 4.5 and the supposed Xbox One incremental upgrades that we've heard so much hullabaloo about in the news and just rumour mills recently? And he basically just reiterated his belief that we are due another full generation before any major changes are made in how we are doing things in terms of console iteration. So basically he's saying that before we see a big change, either if it's a move towards streaming or a move towards more iterative hardware, like, 4.5, then 5, then 5.5, etc., we will see another full generation, more traditional like we've seen previously. And he said, quote, "For the new consoles, there's nothing official on that, so my expectation is we'll have another cycle of consoles before we go to streaming. I don't have dates or anything, but what I see is the manufacturers would prefer to have, again, a new hardware to take up the potential of new possibilities that they can bring." So I guess you could read that a couple of ways. He is either saying that, hey, yeah, the 4.5 is the new console and we'll get that before we get a streaming-based console, or no, it's going to be a full PlayStation 5 or Xbox 2 or whatever it ends up being called before we're seeing streaming. Whether or not that includes PlayStation 4.5 is kind of up for interpretation, but it's clear that, according to Yves, streaming is where it's at, and potentially, yes, a fully digital console future I can definitely see. Of course, PC has very much gone almost completely digital. Of course, you can get discs for PC, but a lot of people have gone completely digital. I don't even know the last time I purchased a disc for my PC, to be quite frank. But as I've said many times now, when it comes to streaming and gaming, in terms of streaming games rather than watching a stream of a game, a lot of work needs to be done in terms of giving everyone better internet. Of course, if you live in a big city or whatever, it's fairly easy to get decent internet. But if you live in a certain country, like for example Australia is notorious for having just really bad internet, or even if you live in a certain area of a certain country, like if you live in a small town in the US, for example, or even here in the UK, it can be really hard to get more than rinky-dink, hamster in a bowl of string kind of internet available too, just because of what's actually provided by the ISPs in the area. It's a problem for a lot of people in certain areas and certain countries that just cannot get a decent enough internet, where downloading like a 50 gig game is going to take probably like a couple of days. For me, that used to be how it was not all that long ago. Thankfully, they finally upgraded the internet in my area, and now I can actually download a game of decent size in a reasonable amount of time. But it's still not great, and plenty of people are still stuck again with that hamster on a piece of string internet, and it's just down to where they live. So that has to be addressed, in my opinion, before we can go fully streaming. It's not going to happen until we can reliably access decent internet with reliable speeds, and of course very, very few drops if possible. So I think it's in the future, but I think it's more in the future than he's thinking. But of course, if we're talking one console generation, it could be 10 plus years from now, so perhaps he is sort of thinking more reasonably in terms of, hey, it's going to take this long for people to get reasonable streaming and internet, etc. So he might be right, he might not. It's an interesting opinion. I don't know if I'd want to see a streaming-based console. A fully digital one could be interesting, but if that were to happen, we'd have to have more reasonable prices on digital, and of course more reasonable return policy, and perhaps even a trade-in system as well. So, do let me know your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.